Okay, we're live.
All right. Welcome to another edition of the Professor Joy podcast. It is March, and I hope you went to YouTube today because our latest little posting. Did you see our posting today on YouTube?
No.
Yeah. It says, hello, March.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
It says, hello, March. May the early spring, A, awaken your soul, and R, remind you to C, celebrate the season with the H, hope and joy it brings.
Wow, who did that? That's amazing. Steffi, who's doing that?
I have no idea. It looks like something Basha might have done.
Yeah? We have so many people involved with JoyScore. We got about over 30 people. So I have no idea who does what, but I'm surprised.
That was great, though. That was really fun to see that this morning, everything. So, everybody, we are live on Instagram, on Facebook, we hope on LinkedIn and everything. And YouTube, absolutely, YouTube. And so it's great that we have a special guest today. First, Professor Joy and Steffi. I'm Gary Metzger from Cal State Long Beach. Our special guest today is Marcy Gilbert.
Hello.
Hello. Marcy is the executive director of Calibrate.Earth.
Correct.
Yes, a Stanford grad.
Yes.
A Cal State Northridge grad. I won't hold that against you since Professor Joy and I are Cal State Long Beach people.
Yeah. Cal State Long Beach is one of the best universities.
Of course it is.
Absolutely. Today, in this moment.
Today, in this moment, yes. Absolutely.
Dominance.
Yes. Yes. So, Professor Joy, from the Calibrate mission statement, I just wanted to share that with you just so you have an idea of the type of person that we're dealing with and everything. We calibrate. We transform and elevate the lives of tomorrow's leaders from under-resourced communities, particularly the descendants of American slavery, by providing spaces where they experience their best selves, feel valued for the potential they bring to the world, and prepare to reinvest their time and talents back into their communities. So, Professor Marcy, I'm curious because I see calibrate, and so I looked up the definition of calibrate, and
clever of you to do that.
No, but
a lot of people don't. Actually,
it says definition of calibrate is to determine, correct, or put the measuring marks on as a thermometer tube, or make standard by finding out and correcting for the differences from an accepted or idea of value. So how does calibrate work into this mission statement?
Well, it's the idea of leveling up, right? To a scientist, calibrate will really mean something because you're bringing something into a kind of harmony or stasis or balance. So it will mean something from that perspective.
So how does calibrate work into this mission?
I just checked and it is live.
Oh, okay. Oh, it's working. Okay. That was scary. I thought there was a ventriloquist in the house here for a second.
I was just making sure that we are live, but we are.
We are. All
okay.
Right.
Fantastic. So one of our facilitators, he grew up in a neighborhood called Pico Union, which is near downtown Los Angeles, and he talks about how, look, going to his high school, there were no counselors. There were no psychologists or college counselors. There weren't any adults who had that time to sit and talk to you. And the youth amongst themselves, they're working so hard to survive and be cool. They're not necessarily having the kinds of conversations that they need that are wholesome, that are going to help them build their self-esteem. I know you're very interested in that, Professor Joy. So where do you find that? When I was a child, I went to summer camp. I was privileged to be able to go to summer camp, and that was the place, that was my quote-unquote safe space where I was able to explore and discover my gifts and share them. So the question becomes, where do our children have those safe spaces where they get to discover and express? I know that you're involved in...
especially the ones who are not as privileged.
Correct.
Correct. That's the key point. that she's talking about, because I know, I mean, most of our kids they have everything, but how about the kids that she's talking about? Or the kids in Precious Lamb,
Right.
you know?
Correct.
And this is so interesting how just a while back I was looking at the program at Long Beach Rescue Mission. And would anyone know in this room what is the single most important cause of homelessness today?
Lack of self-esteem.
Well, I mean, for me, it's about safety. No.
So, two areas for your knowledge: people who are incarcerated and people who are homeless. The single most important thing which is part of their life, which happened to them, is lack of education. Because I couldn't believe, so Jeff, who's the president of the Long Beach Rescue Mission, was showing me around, and I saw a classroom, and there are about 20 adult men working on the computer. So I said, they're learning some special programs, skills. I said, Jeff, what are they doing? He said, they're learning how to read and write. I said, they don't know how to read and write? He said, no. Most of the people who we have in Long Beach Rescue Mission, they don't know how to read and write. I said, so they can't even fill out an application for a job or rent or a place? He said, no. So does it explain you now how people get incarcerated and have become homeless? They have no education, basic skills. They can't even read and write.
Yeah. I think one of your important programs, Marcy, is called Connections. And this is something that you take to schools and you have them do little different, like, circle games and things like that. Can you elaborate on that a little bit?
Sure. There are extensions to Connections like you're describing. We do these social emotional games that are about team building and expression and communication, but the main Connections process itself is actually a listening circle. It's a highly structured process. It follows the same exact ritual every single time. It's just, you're not really supposed to use a word like ritual because gives it a religious connotation, but the idea is that everybody knows what the structure will be. Everybody knows the ground rules. The ground rules are to listen from your heart and to speak from your heart and be spontaneous, because so much of what school and life is about is always having to have the right answer, but let that go so that you can listen. If I'm thinking about what I'm going to be saying, then I'm not actually going to be present to receive. So we want the children to just receive one another and not worry about what they need to say. And when the talking piece comes to you, you get to have the mic and you get to say your response to the prompt. And the prompt is not about eliciting feelings, it's about eliciting our stories. So it could be me saying to you, what was one of your favorite childhood activities? And then you're going to share with us riding bikes or climbing around on the jungle gym or whatever it is. And then we're listening to each other share those stories. And then afterwards, we do what we call a witness, which is I get to witness what I heard you say that resonated with me. And then in that moment, we feel heard and seen, and then we get to start forming bonds.
So you've been executive director for 5 years?
Correct.
What have you noticed in these listening circles and everything from before the pandemic to what it's been like after the pandemic?
That is so interesting. Whatever issues there were before the pandemic are now exacerbated. I mean, when we talked, you were talking...
pandemic did that.
Correct.
I mean, just one single thing like depression and anxiety has gone way out of proportion because of pandemic, because people were scared. They didn't know what's going to happen tomorrow. They're even going to live or die.
Right.
So it created a huge impact on their mental wellness.
Yeah.
And to Professor Joy's earlier comment, about social media, and actually I don't know if that was before we were live or not, but the studies show that the depression and anxiety of 40% rise in youth actually started around 2012.
2012. Yeah. Okay.
So when we think about that, it correlates to children having more access to having technology in their hands, right? So post-pandemic, what we're seeing is a tremendous amount of developmental delays in terms of what you were describing with literacy skills, academic skills, but also with the social emotional skills. We take for granted how much we're socialized by being in community. And if you have children where it doesn't mean so much that I do something and then maybe the teacher gives me like a consequence or a reprimand for an action or a praise, it's not even just what happens to me directly, it's also what happens to you. Perhaps you do something and then I see you get reprimanded, and then I'm learning also by default not to do that. So, and learning how to share with one another and learning how to collaborate with one another. So all of those kinds of things that these children, they lost years of that.
Just to add to that, Professor Metzger a few weeks ago talked about the balance between technology and nature. So there was a teacher who said that there should be minimum of so much exposure to nature because kids are overexposed to technology. And what I was talking about, these apps, like Facebook and Instagram and TikTok. I mean, what do they give you? They give you nothing. I mean, if you take JoyScore, for instance, it helps you transform your life. But these other apps that I'm talking about, all they give you is depression and anxiety,
Exactly. And to that point, Professor Joy, so Marcy, in my basic mass media class, I asked my students for 1 week just to track social media, television, theater, music, things like that. Music is always number one with everybody.
Okay.
They have it lifts them up. When they feel sad, they listen to depressing music. When they're at the gym, it's a different type of thing. But this one paper really stood out from this student who said, I'm on social media and I know I shouldn't be because I always see people who look better than me,
oh my God,
have nicer makeup than me.
Yeah.
That is the absolutely worst.
Yeah.
And
they compare themselves to everybody else on the social media. A lot of the people on social media that you see, they're influencers. They're good-looking, better-looking people, and then these kids look at them and say, oh my God, I look like shit.
Right.
And they get depressed.
So does the Learning Circle help students to get past that point at all, or do they just kind of say, oh my gosh, all these people on the internet are better than me?
Absolutely. So you're saying nature, right?
Right.
I mean, I think about flowers. There are so many different types of flowers. I mean, think right now, imagine in your imagination, you could probably think of 10 different flowers and how different they look. How different a rose looks from a poppy, looks from a jasmine flower. And yet each one is so distinctly beautiful. And I think that's what Connections does. You value your own story, you value your own perspectives, and you get to understand that you are your own beautiful flower. And that's, I think, what helps us build our self-esteem.
I like the analogy or connection she's making with you being a flower. Beautiful. Forget about the stuff you look at the social media.
Right.
Right. The social media is it's trying to put us into a funnel
exactly.
of that there's one look, one right way, one style, it's
right.
No.
But it's not.
It's not. The health of nature comes from diversity.
Right.
That's why we understand that if a species becomes endangered, we need to assist it, because the health of the ecosystem comes from the diversity. And it's the same thing for human beings. We need our diversity of cultures and our diversity of languages and styles of dress and foods we eat. We need all of that to be healthy as a humanity.
I like to throw in a little joke, if you don't mind.
I'm always up for a good joke.
So, as we age, this guy who's sitting at the bar drinking beer, and all his friends around him, And he's saying, guys, what's the name of that flower that we brought at the prom night, And he can't remember the name of the flower. He's trying to think, and people kept on saying, this and that and that. Finally, someone said Rose. You see, yeah, Rose and I had a word last night. That's his wife's name.
That's an old people joke because we need association.
But anyway, I'm sorry.
That's okay. So, Marcy, you talk about in the mission station about having people reinvest back into the community. Are you finding a high success rate that people who do connections, they are motivated and inspired enough to want to go back into their communities and spread the joy, as it were?
Yes, and a lot of the people that end up doing that are people that probably already would have been on that path anyway. They were just looking for a meaningful way to do it, or maybe some kind of entry way into doing that. Something that I think people don't really understand is that the nonprofit model historically was something that was created with people who had extra to give. And so a lot of it was based on volunteerism. And if you need, if you don't have means, you don't necessarily have the privilege of time or doing work for free. With that said, what's astounding to me is that in under-resourced neighborhoods, everybody knows that it takes a village and everybody will contribute for free. There's a passion and a compelling understanding to do that. However, if you could be trained and be able to provide programming and get paid to provide that programming, that's like, a whole other kind of consciousness. I think there are people on our I know that there are people on our team where the connections helped them to know that they get to establish their own values and narrative and legacy. And so where they might have gone on a corporate path, instead they started looking for positions that kept the talent in the community. And that is really what we're trying to help support. So often people who do get on an education path, the education path then takes them away from the community. And what we would like is for them to be able to find some way to bring that love back home.
Our sister project, which is called Readability Tutor, is designed to help people from 4 to 12-year-olds learn and excel in how to read. And Steffi is working on a program called Joyability. So we have readability. She's writing books on joyability. So we'll be able to help kids from 4-year-old and on till the end of life. So that's our plan.
Yeah. Oh, that's a great project. Yeah. And, I'm sure you'll agree that, when people go back into the community and they take the lessons that they've learned and everything, that improves their self-esteem. It makes them feel better about themselves.
Yes, and what's really special is for the youth to see that. So the youth get to work with young adults who have shared lived experience and are thriving, and be able to be role models for them of, seeing themselves in the future. That's part of what's so hard for kids who are growing up under such difficult circumstances, is that it's hard for them to imagine how they're going to get past that. There was a great term that I got introduced to this week. Truly a professor, Emden. I believe he's out of Columbia. Sorry, don't quote me. We need to fact check this.
Okay.
He calls it thrust velocity. So the idea that, how much energy you need to get that rocket to break through the atmosphere. And how do we create that kind of energy for our youth, the kind of engagement or activity or supports they need in order to be able to just launch?
While she was talking, I had an idea, and Gary, you could help us with this because you're still a faculty. Are you faculty somewhere now?
I am not.
Okay. So here is the perfect candidate to help us. I think, where do you get your volunteers to help you with your project?
We don't have a lot of volunteers because the mission is to pay people, so we haven't really built out a significant
But I have
volunteer
an
base.
idea which
Okay.
would help, which
Tell
is
me.
to give college or university students internships to help them. So they go for however many hours. Our internship programs were 90 hours, and they were unpaid.
Right.
And there was a reason for that, because we dictated what their educational benefit was. So if people paid them, then they demand what they should do. But in this case, we told them what we expect. So anyway.
So funny you should say that, because something that we've been having as a plan for the next fiscal year is connecting with Cal State Long Beach, because Governor Gavin Newsom started a program. It's called College Corps. It's for socially and economically disadvantaged college students. The state pays you
Yeah.
$10,000
Yeah.
to participate in a nonprofit.
Absolutely.
So if we could get we need to connect with the College Corps
Where is
rep
the
or
connection?
people at Long Beach. Yes, and get some of those
Right there
Long
is the
Beach
connection.
students. Come on, Long Beach students. Yes.
No, I think I have so many ideas I can help you with, because
Yay.
I've been working with this whole concept for years now. It's nothing new. I mean, our podcast is new and the project is new, but the idea that I've been dealing with is very old, so we'll have a lot to talk about. So
Marcy, if people did want to contribute to Calibrate, how is there a website for them to?
Yes. Calibrate.earth. EARTH. I know it sounds like a strange domain, but
It does.
It is, but it's real. There's actually a ton of domain names out there that we are not familiar with but exist.
Okay.
So calibrate.earth. We have a contact form if you wanted to contact us about opportunities to participate or help or host us. We'll come to you and do connections. We would love to spread the gospel, so to use that word, about connections. We'll come to companies or families or school places or nonprofits. And if people would like to contribute financially, we have the whole donate page. We take all forms of payment, including stock.
Okay.
Yes.
beautiful.
Wow. Full disclosure, Dr. Joy, Professor Joy, I have to say that somebody very close to me, who is a full professor at Cal Poly Pomona, used their sabbatical to do work with Marcy and the social emotional learning
Really?
angle.
Who's
yes,
that?
that's
your
somebody
wife?
very, very close
That's
to
his
me.
wife. Oh my God.
It's how I met
Oh, really?
Professor Metzger. Yes.
Ah.
Yes.
Yes.
I see.
Yes.
So, yes. So there's a dual purpose here. My
Yes, that's
wife
right.
did her sabbatical on it, and
That's beautiful.
the committee loved the results that
Oh,
she
that's so nice.
wrote about, and so. But I thought it aligned so greatly with what we do with JoyScore and everything. I just
Very
wanted
good.
to make
Right
sure that
on.
everybody had an opportunity, if they wanted to, to improve the chances of, people improving their
Yeah.
self-esteem.
Well, thank you.
So thank you. Marcy, thank you so much
Yes.
for being here today. It was a pleasure having you.
Thank you so much. It was an honor to be here.
Well, thank you. Professor Joy and Steffi, you're on your own for the next 2 Sundays.
We'll take care of it.
I'm sure
Would
you'll
you be
do
interested in
just
joining us next 2 weeks?
If I'm available, I will check my calendar.
Please do, because
Okay.
we'd love to have you, and you'll be over there in Professor Metzger's chair.
Well, Stephanie might have more experience. Maybe I should move. Maybe we should move the
So
chairs
the two
clockwise.
of you can decide who wants to sit there.
we'll Rochambeau.
That's beautiful. Well, thank you so much.
Thank
Yes.
you so much.
And thank you, everybody. I hope you enjoyed this edition of the